This is Dr. Ben Pearl, and we have a special Memorial Day weekend Fit Foot You. I am really thrilled to have Dr. Bob Weil. He has a sports radio talk show, Dr. Bob Sports Talk. That's the weekly. And he is also, I'm going to give him the kudos, the author of, Bob, what's your book?
Hashtag Hey Sports. And
Hashtag Hey Sports fans, and is a major contributor to a magazine that he does in conjunction with Rich Dubin. While he's getting situated with his microphone, I'm going to just talk a little bit about today's program. We want to look at what is going on in the United States with youth sports. We want to see what can we do about the level of competition with parents. You've got parents yelling at other parents on the sideline. You've got parents yelling at players on the sideline. You've got youth yelling at referees. These are certainly not, the days of, let's just say, the era that I grew up in. Bob, what do you think the problem is here?
Oh, I think one of the problems is to understand, number one, we've made a lot of progress, Ben. There's a lot of positive aspects of youth sports, but there's also an epidemic of youth sports overuse injuries, both physically and mentally, from just too much pressure, again, too much overzealous coaches, sometimes too much overzealous parents. So I think we need to continue to keep our eye on the ball with having the kids as the main focus, that they're enjoying what they're doing, they're having fun, besides learning all different aspects of being a teammate, of enjoying what they're doing and advancing if they're serious about their particular sport, and take some of the pressure off these kids, as well as, again, tempering some of these overzealous parents and some of these coaches whose behavior is a little bit of off the wall sometimes.
Yes, and as you know, these things are sometimes beneath the surface as well as on the surface. We have eating disorders, things that you might not know about till later. I remember way back when I was in sports in high school, that these eating disorders, particularly amongst endurance athletes, were just starting to become a thing. And I don't know if these eating disorders were as popular in, let's say, the 1940s and 50s, but as the objectification of women became more prevalent, I think so did sometimes the eating disorders. And then I think the level of competition, as Title IX got women more involved with sports, so then did the competitive juices get some of those things going about trying to maximize performance. What are your thoughts?
For years, Dr. Ben, I've had on my show, The Sports Doctor, various experts in the world of these eating disorders. There's a chapter in my book, it's called The Prodigy Sports. You know, you and I both know, as doctors, physical therapists, trainers, all recommend that children play multiple sports, so they use different parts of the body as they're growing up. But for example, the prodigy sports, think gymnastics, think dance, think figure skating, where we have 10, 11-year-olds who that's all they want to do. And that gets us sometimes into the problems of what we call repetitive motion injuries. Think of the young pitcher who's throwing too many pitches too often, too consistently, and runs into upper extremity problems. Or I have 10-year-olds who are doing 100 double jumps a week in figure skating, and again, running into these overuse injuries. So I think we need to be following the three words I use a lot on my show, Ben, which was awareness, understand the challenges, education, educating parents and coaches. This is why I have organizations like the National Alliance of Youth Sports in England, working with parents in sports with Gordon McClelland, iSport 360, whose app is all about communication with parents and coaches, in order to be able to keep our eye on the positive side of things and continue to educate everybody to try to stay out of trouble when it comes to this overdoing it, overscheduling, and just pushing through all of these different kinds of problems. You gave a great example. Maybe it's a young boy or girl who is reluctant to tell their mom or dad, you know, my ankles are still killing me. What do you mean your ankles are still hurting you? Don't you know there's a competition next week and maybe you need to take ibuprofen every day? These kinds of problems are common. And this is where education comes in, is the second term. Again, awareness, education, and then positive action, making the kinds of changes to do the two things everybody cares about in youth sports. Number one, prevent problems, prevent injuries, stay out of trouble. Number two, enhance performance when indicated, when it's something that we're interested in. And we're making some good progress. This is why we're so excited about the upcoming documentary that I'm involved with my friend Joel Franco, who's the co-founder of Chesapeake Films and who's a sports dad and who got involved again, probably by this fall, where our children play, the challenge of youth sports, paying attention to all these things, Ben, that you and I are highlighting as we're speaking.
What are some of the things that you got excited in hearing some of the other back material in this film that, wow, that's pretty good. I didn't think about that aspect of youth sports in that fashion by your involvement.
Well, I think one of the main points is understanding again that there is tremendous pressure. The more talented your son or daughter is, the more pressure to play hurt, the more pressure sometimes to push these kids more aggressively than they used to. So I think the education, the National Alliance of Youth Sports, NAYS, just celebrated their 42nd anniversary, and they coach and teach coaches around the world in the military, in park districts, in order again to educate coaches into understanding the challenges of concussions, the challenges again of overuse injuries, making sure that there are educated parents knowing about what to look for, what to pay attention to. And I think we're making some good progress. Everybody knows about the ranting, raving parents on the sidelines. There's not a season that goes by without everything from some very serious repercussions. And these kids many times are in the middle of it. And we need to, take a deep breath, understand we're making some very good progress, but keep our eye on the ball, again, which is that these coaches and parents need to communicate and they need to be educated so that we don't run into problems, especially, again, in the area of concussions, where there's been so much attention paid, thankfully so, with some of these problems with these kids.
Absolutely, Bob. I'll give you a brief example. Even at the elite level, I happen to know Gary Hall Jr. and an Olympian, and his father was an Olympian. But he told me quite bluntly that he never had pressure from his dad to just be a swimmer. He chose to be a swimmer after he had done other sports. He liked to skateboard and do other things. And I give his dad credit for letting kid be a kid and self-select a little bit, as opposed to the pressuring him to be that prodigy.
Yes. That's a great example of doing something properly, which is allow your son and daughter to participate in different sports and experience different aspects of all aspects of whatever the sport happens to be. It's interesting. One of my poster boys, then, the 2010 men's Olympic figure skating gold medalist, grew up in the town I'm involved with in Illinois, in Naperville. He was 10 years old when we put orthotics in the skates. 12 years later, he's the best in the world. I'm still putting orthotics in 10-year-old skates. But I had his mom on after the Olympics, and we asked her the question, how did you know, Tanya, that it was Evan's goal? It wasn't you pushing him. It wasn't parent overzealousness. She said, Dr. Weil, Evan had ice time at 6:30 in the morning, and I never had to wake him up. He was in the car with his gloves on, ready to go in the morning. I said it was as good an answer as we've ever heard. which is again, and many times children of parents who were athletes, sometimes again are susceptible to a little bit overzealous expectations, and this leads to lots of different problems that we've talked about, and this is why education is so important in youth sports. In order to try
Bob,
to stay
I got
out of
to
trouble.
throw a curveball because it is a hot topic. In fact, it is a very hot topic that is only partially discussed. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. We didn't talk about this in the pre-interview. I am all for inclusion and having people participate in sports. I did a thesis at Indiana University about the inclusion of people with physical disabilities and mental disabilities and making that a mainstream item. I have no answer that I'm going to put out here, but I'm going to put it to you. We have now transgender athletes. You have someone that is collegiate level that decides to become a female and gender identify. Is it fair to you, Bob, and I'm putting you on the spot, to let that person participate in a power sport such as velodrome cycling or sprinting, the like? What's your take on it?
Example, the example that we've all experienced over this past year or so is in the world of swimming, where again you had a transgender. And these are topics that all of us, again, awareness and education, the idea that we've got to pay attention to the possibility, and there aren't all that many examples, but I think it's a good a point that you're mentioning, which is to understand there are these kinds of challenges, and it might be unfair to allow a male who's got the maybe muscle mass and strength of a young male compared to a female, and then in the transgender world, playing in women's sports. I'm trying to remember the great tennis player, the ophthalmologist,
Renee Richards.
Famous.
Renee
right.
Richards.
Exactly. And, which brought up this whole topic, although she was, again, a woman who was, nobody made that big a deal out of it because she was going into a men's sport and she was an opposite. So I think we need to be open to the challenges. We need to be able to discuss these intelligently and then make positive moves. And in this particular instance, I think we're seeing definitely some feedback that in those particular instances, maybe we're not going to allow a transgender female who then is participating in a power or an endurance sport might have an advantage. And these challenges are evolving, Ben. And I think that we need to continue to look at the options and come up with things that are fair for everybody involved. And that's sometimes easier said than done, isn't it?
Yep. Now we're going to round and wrap up. We're rounding third to home plate. I'm going to ask you two quickies. What do you do for fitness, Bob? And what do you got on the barbecue teed up for Memorial Day, if anything?
I'm a walker. I'm somebody who, I'm a senior citizen. I enjoy some Tai Chi, range of motion, deep breathing. I've played around with weights probably my whole life. And I think that the idea, this is the new medicine, Dr. Ben. Number one, eat smarter, including your barbecue. Number two, keep moving. And number three, do things to reduce stress. Pay attention to rest and recovery, and be sensible. So these are the things I think that are so important, regardless of our age. Again, podiatry, the roll of the foot, being in the best shoe for you, understanding the feet affect all areas above are these things that are very important to us. Hey, after all, you're one of these adult soccer players, so you got to pay attention, my friend.
I know. I'm biding my time in my games. I don't always do the 3-day weekend of playing.
Yeah, man, strengthen those feet and ankles, Dr. Ben.
That's right. Well, listen, Bob, thank you so much for taking time out on your Memorial Day weekend. This will be released for Memorial Day weekend. Till next time, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with Dr. Bob on Fit Foot U.
Thanks, Ben.